All right, so welcome to Organizer Training in the Young Scholars Initiative. As I said, we're going to cover what it means to be an organizer and then in detail how to organize a webinar, which is the most commonly organized project among new organizers. So first things first, what does it even mean to be an organizer? It really means three things. Essentially, the gist of it is that you decide to take an active role in the community. So rather than just watching webinars, attending webinars, maybe applying for projects, presenting during a project, you decide to make the switch to actually create those projects, host them, dream them up, execute them, and essentially offer them to the rest of the community to enjoy. So you really get to shape in that way the direction of the community and the direction of your working group in particular. So most members in YSI, they're part of a few different working groups, but one of their working groups has really become their home, and that's the one that they might organize with most frequently. So they kind of like steer that working group in a certain direction a little bit. And as an organizer, you also become part of what we call YSI Core, which really constitutes that group of active members that are shaping the community into what they would like it to be. Because that's really part of the philosophy of YSI, is that we are here together building, the research environment that we wish we had. And as an organizer, that's really what you're doing, right? With every webinar that you put up, every workshop that you organize, whatever project it is, by creating that and adding that to the mix, you are making the space into what you would like it to be. So that's really what we invite you to do. But most concretely, what it comes down to is that as an organizer, you have more privileges on the YSI website, which allows you to actually submit project proposals and then execute them and see them populated on the calendar for other people to attend. So that's the driving force for most people. They decide to become an organizer because they know they have something they want to organize a project around, maybe a particular interest or a particular book that they're reading, or a senior scholar that they have become very inspired by and that they would like to invite to give a talk. Something of that nature tends to be, the sort of initial driving force for people to decide to become an organizer after being a member for a while. We do usually say that before you actively become an organizer, we recommend that you participate as a regular member in a few projects. So you attend a webinar, maybe you watch a few past webinars on YouTube, maybe you even go to an in-person project by applying and seeing if you get selected to present your work. Because that's just a really nice way to kind of familiarize yourself with what it means to be a part of YSI and what it means to do a project, right? You get to watch first before delving in head first. So that's number one. Number two, we always guide people to take a look at the guiding principles. Those are really kind of the philosophical bedrock of YSI. So it just helps you understand in what kind of spirit we would encourage you to organize a project, and it might just kind of inspire you and help you figure out the right angle. And then third, this I mentioned a little bit earlier, it's good to know which working group you kind of consider your home in YSI, which theme, feels like the best fit to your interests, and to make yourself familiar with that working group. So to get to know the coordinators, send them an email, say, hey, my name is Bikram, my name is Wallace, I'm interested in this and this, and I might want to organize a webinar sometime in the next few weeks or months or whatever. So you make that connection because they are really going to be your point person, and that working group ideally will be your home in the community. So that's what to do first. But once you've got that in motion, you can really start thinking about projects. And as I mentioned already, there are a few different formats for projects. So let's take a look at those. First of, we've already mentioned many times, the webinar. Basically a one-time Zoom call. So that could be a lecture, it can be a discussion, it can be a debate, it can have one person in it, it can have 300 people in it, but basically it's a one-time Zoom. Webinar series is many Zooms in a series. It's really not rocket science, but you can make use of this in different ways. So you can use the same structure for a reading group, for example, if you would like to delve into a book and get a few peers to read along with you, maybe invite the author to comment. You could schedule, a series of, say, 4 parts where you read, a different chunk of the book each time, and at the end, maybe you invite the author to come and give their thoughts. So that might be a webinar series. Similarly, you could take one topic, like you could take gender inequality in South Asia, just randomly naming something, but that could be a big enough topic that you invite maybe 5 different speakers in a 5-part series to each give a talk, sharing their perspective on that broader issue. So that might be a webinar series. Workshops is what we call in-person get-togethers. So those are more complicated to organize. They require that you apply for a budget. They require many months ahead of time preparation. But if you do them, they're really a lot of fun because you get to meet people in person, and you get to present your work. So those are awesome. If you get a chance to apply for some, definitely do that. But we're not going to go into it in this call very much because it's a little bit more advanced, right? So it's just simpler to start with the online things. So we'll dive deeply into the webinar for now. So if you do decide to do a webinar, there's a few things to it, essentially. If we break down the process, you can really kind of identify 6 different steps or phases, maybe, that you basically go through from start to finish. So we'll just take those one by one. First of all, obviously, you need an idea. The idea you might already have. You might find it in conversation with other members, and so you might say, okay, I have an idea and I'm going to run with it by myself, or maybe you would like to collaborate with somebody else, somebody who's either already done a webinar, that could be helpful, or somebody who's also new, that's just as fine. So you want to figure out your topic and whether or not anybody is pairing up with you to tackle it. Then you want to go through the process to actually become an organizer, which I should clarify, it's not an application or anything. It's basically just that you signal to the coordinator of the working group by writing them an email that you'd like to become an organizer and you have some ideas. And then the coordinator can, on their side of the website, they can basically upgrade your member profile to a organizer profile. So that's what you need to get done before, really getting started, because that's what unlocks a piece of the website where you can actually go ahead and submit this idea. So that piece of the website looks like this. It's under projects and events. At the bottom, there's a button that says start a project. And if you're currently still a member, that page will probably say, oh, you need to become an organizer first. But once you've been upgraded, and you go to this button, you'll see this. So this screen allows you to basically pick the basic format for your project. So these are the ones we just talked about, right? So in the case of a webinar, you would click on the leftmost button, and then you would get here. And this is where you enter in any people that you might be collaborating with and the working group that you would be hosting this within. So there's a lot of text, but it's really just those 2 things. This search bar allows you to search for other people that you're collaborating with. So if I'm doing this with Christina, for example, I'm going to put her name in, and then she will pop up and I can select her. And then based on who we are and which working groups we are organizers for, those become the working groups that we can choose to host this project under. right? So in this example, I am listed as somebody who's part of the Behavior and Society Working Group, which means that I can organize a webinar that's then hosted by the Behavior and Society Working Group. But if I collaborated with Christina, and she's actually part of the Finance, Law, and Economics Working Group, then I have the option. I can make the project to be hosted by both of those groups, or by only Finance, Law, and Economics, or by only Behavior and Society. So depending who's involved and which working groups they represent, the project can be situated in different working groups. So you type that in. This is still the idea submission, and this is the second part of that. So after putting in who's doing it and in which working group, you just need a tentative title and a motivation. Motivation can just be your explanation of why this is interesting, who you might invite, kind of what you're envisioning, what you already know you would like to do with this project, where you hope it'll go, anything that's already in your head that you would like to just communicate to the coordinator of the working group to say, this is what I'm thinking about. So that's what you submit to get started. And then when you submit that, what happens is a notification goes out to the coordinators of the working groups or working group that you are hosting the project within. So if this was the Behavior and Society Working Group, then the coordinator of the Behavior and Society Working Group would get a notification to say, hey, Heska has submitted a project idea. Then they take a look at it and they say, yeah, this idea is interesting. It looks like it would fit well in YSI. Go ahead. And when you get the go ahead, the website basically unlocks the next stage of planning, really. So then you kind of are moving on, you've closed off the idea phase, and you're starting the planning phase. So in the planning phase, you really get down to the concrete details. This is when you need to figure out when your webinar would actually happen, like the date, but also the time, which is not a you know, many of you are calling in from Asia, so you'll know time zones are going to matter, and you want to pick those carefully. You also want to finalize your title at this stage and make a label. A label is just a short title, because sometimes the the academic community has a tendency to come up with really long and thoughtful titles, but it's useful to also have a short one that could be communicated on social media or in emails. So you pick both of those. You write also your description. This is your description for people who are going to consider attending your webinar. So it's kind of an outward facing description. And you get started on inviting your speakers, right? So that's oftentimes the make or break for a webinar, is getting the right person to come and join to give a talk or run a discussion. So we'll get into a little bit more detail on there. Concretely on the website, once you're in this stage, the way to get back into your project, dashboard, is by going to your homepage, and then here in the bottom left, you see you would have a project organizer overview section. So that's where all your in progress projects are going to be listed. So that's also where you can find them to keep working on them. So when you click on this, I just made this test project so I could show you how it looks. You get to this page that basically shows you the steps that remain, right? So you've submitted your idea, check. Now the project draft is initialized. That really means that now you get to go and enter all the details. So what you want to do is click on this pink button to say edit details. And then you get to enter those fields that I was just talking about. So the title, the description, so really something that says this webinar will host, I don't know, Jeffrey Sachs, who will discuss the path to development in the 21st century. We encourage you to join and bring your questions. It will start at 5 p.m., blah, blah, blah. Basically, an invitational text that'll tell people why they should join and what to expect. Okay. At this point, you also enter in an image for the project. That just helps it look a little bit nicer on the page. A short description, the label, like I said. And then an application form is really not necessary for a webinar, right? Because we recommend keeping those open for anybody to attend. But that comes in useful when you're running a workshop and people need to apply in order to get selected. For now, you can ignore that. Yep. Then time and date looks like this. There's this thing here to help you understand the time zone consequences. You'll see that you know, oftentimes things are kind of organized in the evening in Asia, in the afternoon in Europe, and in the morning in Latin America, North America. That's you know, sort of the most okay slot, it seems, but it's really up to you, because if you have a topic that might be most interesting to people in, say, I don't know, Australia, then you might as well put your schedule accordingly. Last thing you'd enter here is the names of anybody that got confirmed to present. So these are both, you know, any discussants, any chairs that you're putting in that might be YSI members, as well as any external presenters. Like if you are inviting a senior scholar and they're not a young scholar, right? They're not in our membership database, then you'd add them as an external presenter. And you just get to add a little picture and you put their proper credentials, and they get listed on the page as the guest really in the webinar. And sometimes people ask about, you know, how do you go about inviting a senior speaker like that? I think the most common advice is to see if your coordinators in the working group have any template emails that they have used in the past, so that you have a bit of guidance on how to frame the question. If it seems like the coordinator doesn't have that, you can also ask us in the management team. We have a couple letters like that you could copy, but it's really quite simple, because you can put in an email to say, hey, you know, my name is so and so. I am part of this working group, which is part of the Young Scholars Initiative at INET. In our working group, we often organize webinars where we invite somebody to come and give a talk. We think your work on XYZ is really, really interesting. We have read your book. Would you be interested in coming to talk for 45 minutes over Zoom on one of these days? You know, maybe you give them some options, like 4 or 5 options on time slots. Or if they're really, you know, if they're really senior, you just say whenever you want, right? Like that's a little bit of an art, not a science, to see how much do you want to cater to their schedule versus how much do you want them to cater to yours. But that's the basics. You invite them to give a Zoom talk, and luckily that's increasingly common, so most of them will know exactly what you're talking about, and they will be happy to do it if they're not too famous and too busy. I usually recommend starting with somebody that you already know a little bit. You know, maybe a former professor, or a friend of your professor, or you know, somebody with whom you have a little bit of a connection in real life, right, as they say, so that you can you know they'll probably say yes. And then that's a nice way to kind of ease yourself into it, right? And then you can level up after that and just invite people that maybe, you know, are on the other side of the world and you have never talked to them, but you think they're super cool, so you just want to give it a shot. I think that's often helpful to kind of work your way up like that. Okay, so when you've entered all these details, the page comes together. You basically say save, and then you start looking at something like this. Now you've got an unpublished draft of your project page, right? So YSI test project, that's what the title would be. These big circles are where an image would be. On the top, you still have your progress bar kind of showing you what stage you're at. And yeah, this block on the left here where it says a discussion with Professor X, that's the description. So that's, you should write more than this one sentence. I just did that for a test. But yeah, that's basically it. On the top, you have these the control panel, which allows you to make edits after the fact. So if you click on that, it folds open. You can go to edit projects and change a bunch of the details again. I should add though that you cannot change the format of the project. So if you've, way at the beginning, clicked that you're doing a webinar, then you can't at this stage turn it into a webinar series or a workshop. Similarly, if you started with a workshop, you can't turn it into a webinar, right? So you want to be careful at the very beginning to decide on your format. Secondly, we currently have a bug in the system that makes it difficult to edit titles. So it seems as though titles, even when you go in and edit them, the system doesn't save it. So that's really annoying. We're working to fix that. But if you happen to be organizing a project soon, it's good to be aware of that, if you can try to get your title right. I know it's a little bit unrealistic, so if you can't, you just got to email us and say, hey, I'm dealing with the title issue. Please help me change the title to X, and then I will go talk to the web development team to do that from the back end. So that's a little bit silly, but that's just the current situation. Other than that, you can, change who's involved. So if halfway through, another friend of yours wants to also collaborate on this, they want to come in as another organizer, you can do that. If you'd like to even change the working group that this is hosted under, you can do that too. And you can change the date and the time and all of these things before, even after you've published it, you can, but wouldn't recommend it. If you can avoid that, that's better. Okay, so next up, now that you've basically figured out all these details, then it's time to publish, right? So all this time we've just been in draft mode, where also the progress bar reflects that your project is ready to publish, but it's not published yet. Meaning that if I give the link to this page to somebody else on the internet, they won't be able to see it. It'll just say, this is not yet visible, because it wasn't ready for the world yet. But when it's ready for the world, you can go and send it off to the coordinator for final review. And they will just do a double check to make sure that the page is ready. And when they agree that it's ready, you get a notification. Here it says waiting for coordinator to review draft. So once they've reviewed it, you get a notification saying you're good to go. It looks like this. And then you're the one that actually clicks publish, right? Because as the organizer, it should be your call to decide that this can now go out on social media. It can now be sent out to email inboxes, etc. So when you do that, you click this pink publish button that has then appeared here. Then all the members of the working group that this was hosted in automatically get an email notification. And this project will sit on the YSI calendar. But there's other things you can do to help get the word out. You can actually request that we in the management team help promote it on YSI social media channels. So to do that, you will use this link. I have to make sure that it's easily defined in other places as well, but currently this is the link, ysiproject.org/promo. You basically enter in the link to your project page and a couple other details, and then I'll make a graphic that looks a bit like this, just to help you advertise your project and make it look good. And we'll post that on YSI's channel, so you can also share it on your own. Like this. So that's the publication phase. Basically getting the word out, letting people know what's happening, right? Being really clear about the time and who's involved. And then people go to the project page and they can mark themselves as attending. So you can kind of see, oh, okay, there are, 15 people interested so far. There are 28 people interested so far. If you get somebody really famous like Hajun Chang, you might get, 50 or 60. But don't attach too much significance to the number of people signing up. It's okay to have a small group and have a small discussion. Sometimes those are actually the most rewarding because everybody gets to really engage fully. All right, so then a couple more stages remain. You want to be prepared in that you yourself know how you're going to welcome everyone in the webinar, how you're going to introduce your speaker. You want to have communicated to the speaker which topics you would like to discuss and what to expect. Tell them, that there might not be a huge crowd, but you would like to record, and if they're okay with that, the recording can go up on YSI's YouTube, and they might, have a bigger audience there. What else? You want to also let the speaker know that they can expect the Zoom link from you right before the start time of the webinar. This is a little bit unique because we've now, most people are used to receiving a Zoom link way ahead of time, but our system is different to protect everybody from Zoom bombings and things like this. The Zoom link is actually hidden. So you want to tell your speaker or your guest that only after you have begun the webinar, a few minutes before starting, you will be sending them the direct link for them to join. So long as they know that and they believe that you will indeed send the link, that will be totally fine. So the way that goes in practice is that you've got, your webinar, and there's this little control panel. And when you click open the control panel here with this yellow box, you see this. Now there's a lot of buttons, but really the only important one is start. And you don't want to start the webinar until you're ready to actually start, right? So until it's actually time. But when it is time, that's when you hit start, and that's when the Zoom opens up. And that's also where from within the Zoom, when you click on that little triangle next to the participant icon, you get the direct invitation link, and that's what you send to the professor. So here in my example, you can see that I'm basically showing you this is the kind of email you'd send. You'd say, "Dear professor, we're getting ready to start. Please join us via this link." So they go directly into the Zoom, whereas any young scholars that are attending as members of our community are coming through the project page. So that's just, a little bit of getting used to when you're doing your first couple webinars, but after that it will be easy. So yeah, then you're really doing it. Then you're executing. It's always nice to introduce YSI in just a couple sentences at the very start, remind people what working group you are part of, and if they are new, welcome them to the community. You just try for everybody to, be respectful. Most people understand that they should be on mute unless they're speaking, etc. But if you need to remind anybody, just do that in a friendly way. Ask permission if you'd like to record. I think it's always a good idea to record, but we want to make sure that people consent to doing that, especially if we are going to publish the discussion on YouTube afterwards. Just encourage people's participation best you can. Sometimes if the group is small, you can really just call on people, kind of like I did at the beginning of this one. If the group is big, you can use the raise hand feature and encourage to chat more, right? So I think we're all getting increasingly comfortable with Zoom etiquette like that, and you just follow your intuition a little bit. But yeah, that's really it. Then hopefully you have a great conversation and it's really exciting. And then when it's over, it's just a good idea to send a thank you note to the speaker. right? Because they would have taken time out of their day to do this for us. They're not getting paid, right? If that wasn't clear, we never pay honorariums to speakers to participate with us in this way. They just do it because they think it's a good project. It's fun, but it still takes time out of their schedule. So just be grateful, um, and also see if there's any follow up, any conversations that arose out of the webinar that might be worth following up on. So if there were people who, maybe they came up with the next project idea or the next potential webinar, and see if you can allow those conversations to continue, whether it's on WhatsApp or on email. It's all right to do it wherever. We will, in the near future, hopefully set up a Discord group or something in that direction to help those things materialize. But yeah, it's just a good idea to try to keep the momentum going if there is any. And then you can request that the video be posted to YouTube by us, similar to the promotional request. You basically submit the link to me via a form like this. You say which working group it was part of and if it needs any edits, and then we go and put it out onto the YouTube. Looks like this. And then it'll be there, forever for people to enjoy and for you to be proud of, and for us to sort of build this library together. So I think I talked for a little bit more than 25 minutes, might have been 35, so my apologies for that, but we still have a good 15 minutes for Q&A. So feel free to jump in with any questions of any kind. If there's no questions yet, I might ask that. Oh, yeah, location?
Yeah, I have a question. This is a technical question regarding the Zoom organization.
Yeah.
So how will we know who is the host and who is the guest? Like, is there a different link, Zoom link, that we send to the only the host that the guests don't get?
Right. So this is a good question. Really, you're kind of the host, right? Because you're the organizer and you're the one that decides when the meeting starts, and that says hello to everybody. So like, I guess de facto, you're the host. When it comes to the actual technical Zoom host, I don't know if that's you or me or somebody else, but it's somewhere on the back end. So you're never actually like going to zoom.com and creating a Zoom meeting. Like it kind of happens in the system on its own by you typing in the date and the time into those forms. The system through an API creates the Zoom. So really, really, the only thing you need to do is click start with that start button. We recommend 15 to 10 minutes before the actual start time. And then a Zoom window opens. And from there, you get the direct link that you give to the speaker. But all the young scholars, all the people who are just, going to listen in or whatever, they come in not through the direct link, but through a join button that appears. Because as soon as you click start, basically a join button comes onto the project page, and anybody who's a member of YSI can just join through there. They don't need any Zoom password. They don't need to log into Zoom. It just opens. So it usually works fairly smoothly. Sometimes, like this morning, something was going weird with my account. So if you ever have something weird going on, do let us know. But most of the time, it seems to work fine this way. That yeah, you basically get yourself in first, and then you use the Zoom interface to copy the link for the senior speaker slash the guest, right? Like anybody who's not a member of the Young Scholars Initiative. Does that help to clarify? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does help. What if we have multiple speakers, so we send a different link to each one?
Oh, then you send the same link to all of them.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
and
I mean, so long as if you mean multiple speakers for the same webinar, right? Like it'll be a different link for each webinar, but any one webinar will have one link for however many speakers you put in there. Yeah.
okay, and so when I'm the organizer, is the event linked to my personal Zoom account, or do I not have to? Will, like, do I link my personal Zoom account uh, to the event Zoom link, or how does it work?
I
How will
don't.
it know that it is me? That it is me who is
Oh yeah, I
running the
don't
meeting?
know really how it works. Um, actually, I think what happens technically is that our Zoom, basically, we have a corporate Zoom account, right? And it makes like a licensed user for anybody who is an organizer when they start a project, so that you never get that like 45-minute cutoff, right? Um, so I think it runs through your own Zoom in that way, but I could be wrong because um,
I mean, my question is, how will it recognize my name? Because I'm
oh,
not
it
giving.
will somehow. I don't really know how, I guess, to be honest, but I think it does. Can you confirm that, Christina? Like it always has your own name, even if
Yeah, so
yeah.
I use Zoom on my devices. On my computer is connected to
Oof,
Facebook.
your audio is not really cooperative at the moment. You're
Or,
cutting
can
in and out.
you hear me now? It's helping. Oh,
Maybe it's Lokesh actually. There's some sort of background noise.
No, no, nothing. There is no
No?
noise.
Oh no, it's Christina. I don't know.
I'm really not sure. Okay, this is
Okay.
better.
Yeah.
There we go. No, so I was saying I have Zoom in on multiple accounts on my computer and on my phone. And so I think on my computer it's linked to my Facebook, and so it logs in. So once you click the start Zoom button, it logs in with whatever Zoom profile you have on that particular device, and so it will go through like the Zoom app on your device, and then it will show your name. But it's almost like the settings of the Zoom are based on the corporate account of YSI. So they're on cutoffs, anything like that. And so it's, even though it is your name and your app in terms of whatever device you're logged in on, it's using the corporate account of YSI. So you can have all like the benefits of the number of people who can join, like, you know, recordings, whatever it might be, all the polls and stuff like that, all the extra features of the YSI Zoom. So it's almost like just using your app as like an interface, but everything else in terms of settings is the YSI account. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Christina. Any other questions? Wallace says in the chat, it all starts with a conversation with the organizers. I think you mean coordinators. It starts with a conversation with the coordinators of the working group that you would like to be an organizer for. So it is a little, long-winded. We might be streamlining the process to make it simpler to become an organizer. But yeah, we do at the moment. We still request that you contact the coordinators of the working group, let them know that you want to be an organizer, and then they will promote your status, after which you can go do all the steps that we showed you today. And I should add that if for any reason you are not hearing anything from the coordinators, don't take it personally. They're also just volunteers, so sometimes they might be deep in their PhD, or they just had a baby, or you never know what's going on. But if that's the case, if you emailed and you don't hear anything for a week, just email our management office instead, because we can also upgrade you. I can upgrade all of you simply because you expressed interest today, so long as you know which working group you want to be organizing with. you can let me know, and I can also do that for you. But the proper way, and the most helpful way, is to go through the coordinators, because it's also just nice for you to connect with them, get to know them a little bit, and build that relationship, because that's, the working groups and their coordinators are kind of the backbone of the community. They help keep things moving. But if you ever get stuck, this is my email address. Actually, that's the general email address, and then mine is hvd for Heske van Doorne.
Thank you very much.
Of course. Christina, what else did I forget? I feel like there must be so much more.
No, I think you covered everything. And I think the main thing for me is that the more Zoom webinars you do, the more you get used to the platform and the system. And so just encouraging like people to just get started and try it and trying it out. Yeah, we've had so many, moments of like, not really knowing like, what kind of event am I creating? Like, and so how do I edit and like, all those kinds of different things. But the more you do it, the more you get used to it until this platform really becomes like second nature to you. So just encouraging everyone to just get started with whatever idea they have.
Yeah, so true. There's always a bit of a learning curve with any technology that you're not too familiar with, right? So don't be scared off by that. And our website is also a little bit funky. It's completely custom built, which means in some sense it has a lot of strengths. In other sense, it has some weaknesses. So whenever it's not being intuitive or it's not responding the way you expected and you feel like you're lost, it's totally okay to email us again. When in doubt, just email us, because we can help and help you figure it out. And yeah, the main thing is just to get moving and enjoy it, and make yourself comfortable. I'm gonna do one last thing, which is share a document, which is basically, it outlines the same phases, right, that I went through, like idea, planning, execution, whatever. I already forgot what they were, but it outlines all of them in a lot of detail in written form. So I'm just gonna share that with you. I need to find it first, but that might be a nice reference as well. It's just called YSI How to Webinar. And here it is. So as you can see here, that has the same phases. And then, it has a bit more detail with some examples, things to do, things not to do. So if you forget things from today's call and you don't want to watch the recording, you can also look at this. Up to you. We will probably put this on YouTube though to see if other people find it helpful. And we'll keep doing more of these calls. So if this is useful, keep an eye on that project page, because we might do more on different kinds of projects and different challenges to overcome. Like I would like to invite Jay Pocklington to talk about how to run a reading group effectively, because he's had a reading group that's now already going for 2 years, so that's quite the feat, really, to retain people's attention like that and build a group that just keeps going. So we might be able to do that. I would like to invite Cecilia Ricap and Christina to talk about how to start a local hub, which is something new we're doing in YSI, around getting people together face to face in big cities, places where there happen to be a lot of YSIers. That may or may not be the case for you, but if it is, then we could help you try to get some regular meetups going. Could be just for socializing, but it could be really nice. And third, once you get the hang of this, we can also talk about workshops And really, that's probably going to be a few calls on how to tackle the organization of a workshop, because it's really a bit more involved. Like we'll talk about how to engage partner organizations, how to handle how to interact effectively with professors that you invite in person when they fly over, and you're the one to host them and welcome them and guide them, as well as maybe things like how to host a good discussion and build kind of capacity in your working group, meaning that you get people kind of more involved and keep the project ideas coming and keep the connections going. So there's a lot of things we could do in these conversations to try to help you gain all the skills that you would like to gain, to really educate yourself in a way that would be fun. So that's the idea. But it's 1 past the hour now, so let's wrap this up. Thank you all so much for being here today, and hope to see you again. Welcome to YSI Core. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Goodbye.
So much. Bye.
Bye-bye.